Good morning. Today is Sunday, November 13th. We are 1 week into the Big East season. I'm Matt St. Jean. That's Tommy Godin, and we're gonna be talking about this the first week of college basketball being back, and what a week it was, Tommy.
What a week it was. It was fun. It was fun. There were a lot of good games that went on, some not very competitive games, and one surprising loss in the Big East.
Yeah, I think that right there is really gonna be our lead story. Um, only one loss in the first week of Big East play here. You don't want to see any losses in the first week. We got a good show for you. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about Providence and Georgetown. A couple of close calls there. A couple of Big East teams doing well, and we're going to look ahead. We've got the Gavitt games coming up this week, so we're going to start to preview those, tell you what you should be looking at. We're going to start here by looking back at this first week. College basketball finally back, which let me just say, it was nice to have that on the TV again, being able to just sit back on the couch, watch games. Monday night with all those games on, that was overwhelming trying to process all of that at once. I had about eight stat broadcast windows open at the same time, trying to monitor all of them. You got TweetDeck, you got the live feed bouncing back and forth between all the games. It was like NFL Week 1 when you have to like relearn how to actually watch football because you haven't seen it in so long. So that was a lot. I know you were at the Villanova opener. You
I
were,
was.
yeah.
I was.
So you didn't get to see that. You were also at Villanova's second game at Temple. Villanova losing at Temple for the first time in a decade. A tough loss. This is kind of the big story right now. Villanova took a tumble in our power rankings all the way down to number 5. What are your thoughts on where this team is right now and what went wrong in this loss?
Yeah, they did take a tumble down to number 5 in our power rankings. I'm not sure if that's the fairest. I mean, they were the only team in the Big East to play two decent teams, I should say, in the first week of the season, but this was a very tough physical game. Temple has one of the best backcourts in the American Athletic Conference in Caliph Battle and Damian Dunn. Um, Temple had a huge chip on their shoulder going into this game. They lost pretty much a bye game to Wagner the day before, or I'm sorry, earlier in the week in overtime. So they had a huge chip on their shoulder. They see Villanova coming in vulnerable. Kyle Neptune's first game on the road is at Temple, a team that hasn't beaten Villanova, like you mentioned, in a decade. And they took care of business. They did what they had to do. They wanted it more. I mean, Villanova got into foul trouble early. Eric Dixon, 2 fouls in the first 6 minutes of the game, I believe. Chris Archidiakono played 36 minutes. I don't think that was in Kyle Neptune's game plan going into this one. But sometimes that's just how the chips fall. I don't hate a loss here for Villanova. I texted you immediately after the game. This is the most okay I've been with a Villanova loss in quite some time. I think that they're going to learn a lot from this loss. I'm going to go talk to Kyle Neptune right after this episode and let you know what he thinks, where they're going from this. But they're going to learn more from a loss here than they would in a win, in my opinion.
You mentioned Chris Archidiakono. His stat line here is something else. 36 minutes played, only 3 shots attempted, 2 points, 1 free throw that was a miss, and then 10 rebounds from a guard, only 1 assist, 1 turnover. What? That just doesn't make sense for somebody to play that much and as a guard and have really only an impact when it comes to rebounding.
Yeah. Did you know he was perfect from the free throw line last year? The only one on Villanova's team. That was the first free throw he's missed in over a calendar year. Little fun fact for you.
Not a
But
great time to miss that one.
not a great time to miss one at all. But yeah, I don't think that was in the game plan. I don't know how he led the team in rebounds by a fairly significant margin too. I think it was the next closest had 4 or 6. Um, but yeah, that wasn't in the game plan. I can assure you that much. And it's good to have Chris Archidiakono in there. I know that's contrary to a lot of people on Twitter's belief, but a senior guard knows the program, knows the system. There's almost a sense of calmness. I mean, Mark Armstrong, for as good as he is, he's still a freshman. And that being at that game, that was a tough environment. That was a tough road environment. The Temple fans, they were raucous. They got to storm the court twice. That was cool to see. Not as a Villanova fan, but as a basketball fan. But having Chris Arcidiacono in there brought a sense of calmness, brought a sense of leadership, and that was Neptune's reasoning behind it, if I had to guess.
Yeah. And I mean, I think this kind of highlights the issue with Villanova right now, at least from my vantage point, is that with no Justin Moore right now, Colin Gillespie is gone. The guard situation is really murky. Caleb Daniels has been really, really good thus far. I think Jordan Longino, he's in that guard conversation. He's not going to run the point, but he's been good as well. But outside of that, it is just a black hole. I think there's 4 guys on Villanova averaging at least 10 points per game, and then the next highest is 4 points. So there's no middle class on this Villanova team. It's either true bench guys who are not going to give you a lot or starters. And there's really only 4 guys that are giving you a lot. So the depth isn't there. Yeah, Mark Armstrong has not been what they hoped so far. He only had 2 points in this one. Brizzy has not really done much either. Is Arcidiacono really going to be the answer in this guard situation, do you think, for a little bit? Or do you think they have to look for other things while they're waiting for Moore to get back?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, right? I mean, for the time being, yes, Chris Arcidiacono is going to be the starting point guard, whether you like it or not. They are going to roll with Chris Arcidiacono from everything I've heard. And until somebody else steps up, like you mentioned, he's going to have to be that guy. Now, ask me again right after the new year, we might be talking about a different story. I think Mark Armstrong has the ability to take that step. I think Angelo Brizzi is going to transform. I mean, he already looks like Dante DiVincenzo a little bit. If he starts to play like him, I think he can provide some valuable bench minutes. So for right now and for the time being, the next couple games, the next couple weeks, sure. Chris Arcidiacono is going to be that guy, but Mark Armstrong, look for him to take the reins, hopefully by the new year.
Yeah, that's the big question, like you said here for Villanova. And I know both of us had them at the top of the power rankings, top of the league, and our preseason stuff. I have a hard time sticking with that if the guard situation continues to look like this. I think it's still a good team. They got selected for our game of the week next week. They're one of 2 things. You can check out my piece on the site for that. They're playing Michigan State this week, so we're going to find out again if they're able to address this. They got a tough schedule here. The other thing that jumps out from this Villanova box score, only 7 3-point attempts. The last time they had only 7 in a game was 2001, December 5th, 2001, an overtime loss at Penn. How do you can tell we're not in the Jay Wright era anymore, because that's just not something that's going to fly with him. It was hard to find any single-digit 3-point attempt games when he was the coach.
I couldn't believe it, to be honest with you. I mean, Temple, the Liacouras Center, has awful Wi-Fi. I am putting them on blast. I could not get onto the stat broadcast all night. Temple, figure it out. But no, with that being said, I looked at the stats at halftime, and I couldn't believe what I saw. That Jordan Longino 3 with 52 seconds left was just their second made 3 of the game. I mean, it was unacceptable. I mean, I understand you got to take what the defense gives you. They weren't giving Villanova any chances. They credit to Temple and Aaron McKee's game plan. They guarded the 3 really well. They set up a very good blueprint for teams to follow to take away that 3. They gave Kyle Neptune a lot of chances to learn and a lot of chances to adjust, but Villanova was taking what the defense was giving them. Caleb Daniels was eating in the paint. But that was shocking. I've personally don't remember a game that they shot less than 10-3. That was crazy.
Yeah, that's very uncharacteristic of this Villanova team. So again, it's Kyle Neptune's got his work cut out for him here, addressing that. I think we're going to find out a little bit of what he's made out of here. He did not have the worst start of any coach this week, though. Just looking around college basketball, Kenny Payne down there at Louisville.
My
You
goodness.
lose to D2 Lenore Ryan in an exhibition, barely win your other exhibition game. Now 2 bad losses to start the year. Oh boy.
Oh boy, is right.
Yeah, not great stuff there. Villanova, I mean, again, we're going to find out very quickly if they can make adjustments here. They get Delaware State on Tuesday or Monday.
Monday, tomorrow.
That should be not a close game,
No,
not at all. And then they get Michigan State at the end of the week. So yeah, that's where things stand with Villanova. This is the second year in a row that they had the first Big East loss. They had it last year at UCLA in that 11:30 p.m.
that
tip
was
off.
disgusting. That was brutal.
The game went until I think 1:45 in the morning
Yeah.
Eastern time. I stayed up for all of it too. So that's where we are. That's quite a game, an overtime loss there. So second year in a row, Villanova's doing it. That's something. A road loss in a rivalry game isn't that big of a deal. I don't really care that Villanova lost this game. It's the underlying stuff that's more important.
Yeah, completely agree. That UCLA game was disrespectful that it was at 11 p.m. Eastern time. I live in an apartment. I can't sit down and watch a basketball game. I'm up. I'm yelling at the referees with Jay Wright. That was an awful game. But yeah, they dropped the first game of the Big East, the first team to go down, but they were last year and things turned out all right. So if they can get things under control with the underlying guard play issues and depth issues and everything else, I think they'll be quite all right.
Yeah. While Villanova was the first team to go down, it looked like we might get the first team to go down on just Tuesday night, second night of the season. Providence and Georgetown both played that night. Both of them had incredibly close calls. The Friars hung on to beat Rider by a single point. And then Georgetown almost lost at home to Coppin State. That game went into overtime where they were able to hang on to it. I don't know which one of these you want to get into first, but man, that was not the start to the season either of these teams were hoping for.
No, I'll start with Providence because you're our resident Providence guy, so I want to let you take the floor with this one a little bit. The wet floor, as I should say. The more things change, the more they stay the same up there in Providence.
You can change the name of the building, but you can't change that wet floor.
You cannot fix that leaky roof. But yeah, I could not believe the score. I tuned in a little bit late, and Rider had a 10-point lead in the first half. I couldn't believe it. Not to say Providence was terrible in the first half. I think Rider is actually going to be a decent team, one of those teams that is going to be a popular pick later in the year, especially against the spread in a lot of these games. Rider's a good team, but man, did Providence struggle early on.
Yeah, and I think the common thread between both of these teams is that they both have 5 new starters. That's, I think, a bigger deal for Georgetown. More new faces there than you see in Providence. So you got Jared Bynum and Ed Croswell there for the Friars, who were your first 2 guys off the bench last year, who were now in the starting lineup. Yeah, that was just it was a team that did not have an identity for Providence there against Rider. You mentioned too a good Rider team. This is a very, very experienced group returning a lot of scoring. They're going to be second. They're effectively second in the MAAC preseason there. They were picked third, but that was before the shenanigans at Manhattan. So I think we can comfortably say that that's really the second best team in that conference right now. Bryce Hopkins, I think, took a little bit to come on. The number that's mind-boggling to me, 43 free throws attempted for the Friars, which really wasn't like bad officiating leading into that either. It was the Friars were just taking everything to the rim, and Rider was fouling on all of it. But Providence only hit 26 of 43 free throws. So, I mean, you leave 17 points out there. That's why this game is as close as it was. They hit half of those, and this is not really a game in doubt at all. Yeah, I think Rider brought a good performance. And the Friars turned it on in the second half, just couldn't close the door. They ended up really, really slamming the door shut on Northeastern last night. So I think that was good to see the Friars put that all together finally in game 2. But game 1 was, you come away from that and this team is not very good.
Yeah, I wanted to complain so bad about the refs giving Providence the win and the luck factor going up. I wanted to moan about it, but I was watching the game and Providence would go in the paint and get clobbered. Rider was earning those foul calls. They got every penny's worth of those foul calls for sure.
Oh, yes. Providence right now is currently 7th in luck on Ken Palm for those who care about that number. Yeah, and they end up going on to beat Northeastern. Actually, the defense gave up exactly 65 points to both teams. So I think this is the Providence team very much still figuring out an identity. They've played one good half this season. Still got 2 wins. They got a game against Stonehill this week, and then at the end of the week they play in an event at Mohegan Sun. They're going to play Miami and Maryland or St. Louis. We'll have more on that later in the week, but that's the Friars get one more game here to tune up before things get real. Let's talk about Georgetown, because if there is ever a case to fire a head coach in the first game of a season in a win, it was this one. I mean, the Coppin State played on Monday night and then went and played on Tuesday night at Georgetown. They're on 24 hours rest. They scored, I think, 59 points in the opener before scoring in the 80s against Georgetown. That defense not looking great, really struggling to figure out rotations. I mean, not a lot of good you can say about Georgetown on that one.
No, I'm in Pennsylvania. I'm in Philadelphia. I know you're in New York. And yesterday, the weather, the temperature was a little bit higher. It was around 70. That's not the weather changing. That's Patrick Ewing's seat. It could not be any hotter.
His seat is so hot that it is warming up the entire Northeast.
It is warming up the entire Northeast. They're 2-0 somehow. Thank God the game was 11 a.m. Because I'd be upset if I watched that over anything else, to be honest with you.
And that was, can we mention, that was an 11 a.m. game, their second one. And it was only available on like the regional local network or streaming. You could not just go on Fox Sports 1 or 2 and turn that one on, which I think that's the state of this program right now.
Yeah, it was probably for the best. It was probably for the best, to be honest with you. Yeah, Georgetown played 3 awful. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat it. They played 3 awful halves of basketball and then one like random really good one. It was, yeah. I mean, the second half of their second game, Brandon Murray came out of the locker room. He was 4 or 5. Primo Spears was 7 for 8. They were only up by 2 at halftime to Green Bay. So it was odd, but I mean, I guess that's what you want to see from Patrick Ewing, the adjustments at halftime, maybe. I don't know, but that was strange how good they were almost.
Yeah, the offense here is really not an issue for Georgetown. How is this? Primo Spears leads all Big East players in total points right now. Who would have called that one before the season?
Not me.
Yeah. And this is, I mean, it's in the game against Coppin State, 219 of the 225 minutes played in that game were from guys who were not with the team last year. So obviously there's a certain grace period into getting things, but this is when you're comparing Coppin State and Rider, and when we're talking about the Providence and Georgetown close calls, Rider is a significantly better team than Coppin State, which is, I think, what makes this worrying. And Georgetown's defense should not be allowing as many points as they did. Give them credit for kind of turning it on against Green Bay and just playing a much better game at both ends of the floor there. It was dicey in the first half, as was Providence against Northeastern. Both of those teams turned it on in the second half of their second game. Both of these teams, lots of new players. So maybe it's just a transfer thing. Maybe it's just takes time to come together thing. It's a 2-game sample size too. So we're very, very early in this, but that is not what you wanted to see from Georgetown. And what are we doing with Patrick Ewing right now?
Yeah, his seat's hot, and it's only going to get hotter in the Gavitt Games. They're going to go see Northwestern, who lost their best player to North Carolina this offseason. I mean, Ewing's seat's only going to get hotter. It's not a must-win game for the program, but it's almost a must-win game for Patrick Ewing.
Yeah, you gotta prove something here at some point.
Yeah.
All right, let's look on the bright side of things here. We got a couple of Big East teams that actually looked really, really good here in week 1. The 3 that we're going to highlight here: UConn, Xavier, Seton Hall, all teams moving up in our rankings. Let's start with UConn. They got our player of the week here in Adama Sanogo. And there is nothing more terrifying than when you realize that Adama Sanogo can shoot threes now. Yeah. Who allowed this? It might be the hardest player to defend in the paint in the Big East outside of maybe Clark Brenner, but Sunoco is a force down there, and if he can kick out and shoot, I mean, he might be the runaway player of the year.
Yeah, he was our Big East player of the year. He was the conference's Big East player of the year, and he's looking every bit of it right now.
Yeah, he's tied for first in total rebounds, second in points in the conference right now. UConn bullied Boston last time out. That game was just not close. That was not fair. And they also killed Stonehill. They won these first two games 85-54 and 86-57. Neither of them were in doubt. This is currently, according to Ken Palm, this is the best team in the Big East right now, because Creighton had kind of not a close call in the first game, closer than it should have been against St. Thomas. Creighton looked good in game 2, but UConn is the team that's looked the best in the action we've seen so far. Hassan Diarra has looked pretty good at distributing the ball. He was actually not a guy I was that high on transferring. I like Tristan Newton. I like Naheem Ali. And Diarra I had questions about for the Huskies. He's looked good so far. Donovan Clingan has looked good. Alex Caravan has looked really good for them. I mean, it just goes, this team has depth right now. And this is with Andre Jackson out, Samson Johnson's out, Jordan Hawkins is out right now. I mean, it's incredibly impressive what this team's doing.
Yeah, UConn's definitely impressing me a lot. I mean, Donovan Clingan, he's like 9'4". I mean, that dude is massive. Jeez Louise. But yeah,
he is the highest point in the state of Connecticut.
I saw that tweet. That was a banger tweet.
Did you know that I love this fact? The actual highest point in the state of Connecticut is on a mountain that goes into Massachusetts.
Really?
So it's like on a slope that goes like this. The highest point in Connecticut is on the border with Massachusetts right here.
Matt St. Jean, the human fun fact.
Yeah.
But yeah, 27, 15, and 2 from Adama Sanogo in their win over BU. Damn.
Disgusting.
Yeah. there's no other word. Damn. That was impressive. He has been as advertised, and you mentioned it a little bit, but realistically, going into Big East play, UConn could be 9 or 10 people deep. And that would be massive against teams like Villanova that, 7, maybe 8 players deep. So
yeah. And UConn's getting really good minutes from guys right now too. It's that depth is so important. And I mean, like we said, they're still waiting for guys who are going to be important pieces in this to really play for them. So it's incredible. This UConn schedule is also really easy right now. They're not in the Gavitt Games, not allowed to be. So they don't play a real opponent here until Thanksgiving. Their next 3 games are against Buffalo, UNC, Wilmington, and Delaware State. They have a 96% chance or better of winning all 3 of those, according to Ken Palm. So none of those should be particularly close. We're not going to find out exactly how good this UConn team is for a little bit. It sure seems like this should be the team at the top of the conference or one of them. I want to talk about, we're talking about depth. I want to talk about Seton Hall here, because this is a Seton Hall team that is without Alexis Yetna right now. They got a couple other injuries going on, and they've dominated their first 2 opponents. They crushed Monmouth 79-52, beat St. Peter's 80-44. This defense is currently top 25 in Ken Palm. It's 3rd in effective field goal percentage allowed. It's top 10 in 3-point field goal percentage allowed. It's 12th in turnover percentage. It's a defense that's doing a lot right. And this team is basically 10 deep right now without Yetna in there. Tyrese Samuel, Trey Jackson, Tay and Dre Davis, Alamir Dawes out there looking good. Casey and Devo, Jameer Harris, Femi Odukale, Kaderi Richmond, Jaquan Sanders. These are all guys that are contributing for them. All guys that are playing real minutes right now. And I said it before the season, Shaheen Holloway is going to be tough to defeat with that defense. These teams stood no chance.
Yeah, fun fact. I thought Ndefo's first name was Casey. It was news to me that his name is KC, so that's fun. But yeah, the Davis brothers, Dre and Tay, very solid. Seton Hall is a team that surprised me most, especially with their depth. I mean, you have Shaheen Holloway a week or two before the season saying that we realistically only have 7 guys that can play right now, and they go out and do that. Seton Hall is a lengthy team. They're a very deep team, very athletic team. You picked them when we did our last podcast, the Big East preseason overview. I think you picked them as the surprise team that could win the Big East. And in my head, there's no way, right? But now I expected Shaheen Holloway to have a little bit. I expected Shaheen Holloway to be successful, but not in his first year. And I understand. Let's pump the brakes. It's the first 2 games of the year, but they impressed me the most out of any team in the conference. The first 2 games.
Yeah, this defense looks really good. Alamir Dawes looks like he fits in right away in the Big East. Let me tell you, the armband that he wears, I absolutely love that.
It's a little thing.
It's a great aesthetic. Like, it's just, you see that, and they got like the blue trim uniform with the script on the front, and it's like, all right, this is what college basketball is about. Like, this team immediately just has a really nice identity and attitude about it, which makes it fun to watch. No player for Seton Hall is playing more than 25 minutes per game right now, too. Talk about that depth. So it's coming from everywhere. And I think there's questions still about scoring, what that's going to be long term. But that's a question for another time. And we're gonna talk about that when we look ahead this week. But just, this is everything you could have wanted in a Seton Hall start.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And Defo, he's just as solid as they come. Carrying over his performance from the magical NCAA tournament run last year into this season. He's just solid. He does all the little things right. And you talked about it a lot, but Alamir Dawes, he had a double-double in his first game as well. He just does all the little, his defense is outstanding. It's shocking to me so far in the games that I've seen.
Yeah, Dre Davis, good too. He's a guy I liked coming over from Louisville. I didn't expect him to be this good right off the bat, but I'm not surprised that he's able to provide an impact here. So good stuff there in Newark. The last of these 3 teams we want to talk about is Xavier, because Xavier, they got first place votes here in the Big East, and we were kind of unsure of that. They've looked the part through the first week. Obviously, 2 bad opponents there in Morgan State and Montana. 2 dominant wins there. And the offense looks, I think, as good as people were hoping. This is currently a top 25 KenPom offense, 12th in effective field goal percentage and offensive rebounding percentage. And the name right now, the leading scorer for Xavier, Fremantle. Just think about where this situation was a month ago and where this was a year ago, and now where he is, and it's nice to see a little bit of redemption for him, it looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. When we talk about redemption, the Kai Tandy as well.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, that was not a name that was really on the radar. He's a guy that barely played for them last year, and he couldn't really grow on a freshman year. And now here he is giving you really quality minutes with Kunkel banged up. And you see Kiki Tandy at the starting lineup, and it was just, oh, that is interesting.
Oh, it's Kiki?
I believe so.
Wow, I am all messed up with the names here today, but how many cool names do we have in the Big East, man?
We're going to have to do an all-name team at some point in here.
Certainly will have to. The Big East has some of the coolest names in all of the country.
Yeah. One of the other things here, Colby Jones, 7 assists per game right now.
Wow.
I talked about my biggest question for Xavier being who's going to play make for them. There's your answer. Colby Jones. He only has 1 3-point attempt so far, which I find kind of funny since they hyped up his 3-point shooting all offseason, and he's 0 for 1 through the first week, but it doesn't really matter when everybody else is playing well and he can dish it like he's been doing.
Yeah, and I mean, Fremantle and Nunji, they still look good. Xavier, they just have a lot of role players who are executing their roles, and I talked about it all preseason. You want to look better from your first game to your last, and they had a blowout win in their first game over Montana, 86-64. But against Morgan State, they looked even better, 96-73. They beat them by. There was a significant improvement from game 1 to game 2. And
yeah,
Sean Miller's still sweaty.
Obviously, still awaiting a suspension there. We'll see what happens. Presumably a suspension. But yeah, I think there's still questions about just how good that kind of Kiki Tandy, Adam Kunkel, Cam Kraft, Desmond Claude, how good that group will actually be this season. Desmond Claude averaging 2.5 assists per game there in limited minutes. That's not bad. They're getting some stuff here from the bench, which they needed. And that top four, Fremantle, Nunji, Boom, and Jones, has been as advertised. So the arrow is trending up right now for Xavier in a really, really good way. We're going to find out. They're also our co-game of the week. Xavier plays Indiana. They host Indiana, a top 10 Ken Palm opponent right now on Friday, which should be a fantastic game. We're going to have a show Wednesday night. So we're going to look ahead, but we're going to talk about the games on the back half of the week when we talk on Wednesday. But that is that's going to be a game to watch, most certainly. Let's pick up the pieces here and other stuff. We talked about a lot of Big East teams there, but not every team. Was there anything else this week that stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, Creighton, I think we touched on it a little bit. Creighton, they're 2-0, but they didn't sneak by. They beat St. Thomas by 12. But that game, that was a lot closer than I think it should have been. I think Creighton was expecting to win that game by a lot more. Baylor Shireman looks all the part of our Transfer of the Year award recipient. But Creighton did look better in their second game of the year. They moved to 2-0 in Summit League play. They are – you like that one?
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, they snuck by St. Thomas. I was expecting a little bit more from them.
Yeah, and this team has looked good so far. I think part of it is you maybe haven't seen quite the leap you were expecting from some of these guys. Like Baylor Shireman and Ryan Nemhard are both averaging just under 10 points a game. I think people were expecting a little bit more than that from them. We're a weekend. So there's no real signs of a concern here with Creighton, but let's see what happens. I think the same question marks we had before the season are absolutely there for them. I want to talk about Butler. Only one game this week. Manny Bates, though, so good in that one game. 25 points. I think he had 11 rebounds, 12 rebounds, 3 blocks. He looked just fantastic. Obviously, only one game. We're going to talk about Butler in a minute here when we look ahead. They got a big game on Monday that I thought that was big. I know you're a Manny Bates fan.
Manny Bates is the coolest dude of all time. No, but yeah, friend of the show, Manny Bates, 25-11 versus New Orleans. Him, Eric Hunter, and Chuck Clark. That trio is very dangerous. We nabbed Butler as one of the teams that could surprise us early on in the year. Pierce Thomas was impressive. The only thing that concerns me with them is their shot making in the half court. They took good shots, but they don't. Aside from Chuck Clark, they don't have that guy that is going to go make his own shot. If you need a bucket, you give it to him and say, go get it.
Yeah, they only made 16.7% of their threes. How about this for you? They are 337th in the country in 3-point shooting percentage and first in 2-point shooting percentage. They made 80% of their shots inside the arc. Yeah. So, I mean, if you're doing that, you don't have to worry about the outside shooting, but that's absolutely a concern for them right now. They did not get a lot from deep.
The most surprising thing from that game, did you see Michael DeRose's tweet, one of our writers?
What did he say?
The red panda.
Oh, yes.
She dropped the bowls.
Tragic.
That was tragic. It was the first game of the year for everyone, even the red panda. Let's cut her some slack.
Yeah, we're still breaking it in there.
Yep.
Well, I want to look at St. John's real quick. Just a stat for you. I wrote about this in my article today. Their opener against Merrimack, 86 possessions in that game. The last time that St. John's had that many possessions in a regulation game, December 1st, 2001 against, I think, Fordham. It's been that long, and it's crazy that and that stat I mentioned about Villanova not having 7 3-pointers in a game. Both of those last happened in the same week back in 2001. I don't know what that means, but St. John's I think has looked good. They had a close game there against Merrimack, closer than we wanted. That's why they didn't get put in that group with UConn, Xavier, and Seton Hall. But overall, a good week I think for St. John's.
Yeah, I think good is is the right word. It was good. It wasn't great. They struggled a bit against Lafayette, and then they didn't. They kind of
Yeah, I put it together.
yeah, they definitely put it together. How cool were Curbelo's glasses though?
Yeah,
Little
he looked.
orange tint in them.
I like that. It's a good
Yeah,
look there.
I
Joel
wish Caleb
Soriano
Daniels
too.
had a mask. They get it tinted. That'd be sick.
Joel Soriano also had a really impressive game for them. Davy Jones has been as advertised. I mean, this St. John's team looks about as good as people expected. So let's see how it looks against real competition coming up here. I think the only other team we haven't mentioned in here is DePaul, if I'm thinking about this correctly. And we're going to talk about DePaul here for the Gavitt Games. No Nick Ongenda for them right now. I think they've looked good. Javon Johnson looks really good for them. It's This team looks, I think, as good as people expected. Nothing that really moves the needle, but
Yeah.
this isn't a bad team.
Yeah. Yeah. Mo Gibson, another friend of the show. He he's been talked about as a culture changer. I mean, getting up 7:30 in the morning, putting up shots, and he looked every part of it. 24-8 last game. Zion Cruz, the freshman, he also looked impressive in his time. I know what his first action in college, he came in, made a three, and then got the ball back, made a layup. Back-to-back buckets for him. That looked good. And the most impressive for DePaul, Tommy Goggin, not me, Tommy Godin, Tommy Goggin, the two-time hot dog eating champion for DePaul in the pregame.
Big stuff. Big stuff for
Impressive.
them. Yeah.
Did we get a number? How many he put down?
I didn't see one. We're going to have to ask Lawrence about that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just realized we missed the team that was just a 90-minute train ride up the coast there, and that is Marquette. Marquette also had 2 wins. Nothing that moved the needle, but good stuff there. Tyler Kolek, 10 assists per game starting out here. The team looks good. The freshmen look good. We're going to find out more about Marquette as the season rolls on here. Nothing that moves the needle yet, but as good as I think we could have expected.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, nothing that moves the needle. I think Sean Jones has been impressive, especially on the defensive end. But yeah, nothing that moves the needle. You hit the nail right on the head there.
Yeah. All right, that's going to do it for us looking back. Let's look ahead here. We got an interesting week. First real week of games here in the Big East. We got the Gavitt Games. Finally here. It's always a great sight when the Gavitt Games are here. I mentioned this in my article today before we get into the individual games. I think this is the weakest slate the Gavitt Games have had. Only one of the top 4 teams from the Big East last year is in them. Only 2 of the top 6 in the Big Ten. All 10 teams between the 2 conferences that missed the tournament last year are playing. So not the best slate of games, though I think we actually do have some good ones in here.
Yeah, I mean, other than Villanova and Michigan State and Indiana and Xavier, we do have a lot of snoozers, but it is going to set up for a good slate next year. So
hopefully, and I think we got probably one good game here every night. Let's start by talking about the Monday slate, and we're focusing on the Gavitt Games here. There are other games on Monday, but Villanova against Delaware State is not going to draw the attention here. So we'll apologize now if we're not talking about your team because they're not playing in this, but we're gonna focus on the highest level games here. I think of these 2 that we're getting on Monday night, Butler, it's DePaul at Minnesota and Butler at Penn State. Butler at Penn State to me is actually an incredibly intriguing game. This is a Penn State team. It's actually not bad.
Yeah. I mean, the Penn State head coach, Micah Shrewsbury, he's led his team to a potential breakout season this year in the Big Ten. I mean, there's not a lot of star power on Penn State, but you could say the same thing about Butler, essentially. Penn State's bringing back guards Jalen Pickett and Miles Dredd, brought in transfers Andrew Funk and Cam Winter. I think that's good.
That's a great name.
Dude, isn't it? Oh, my God. So many good names today.
I hope he goes by Drew.
Does he? Drew
hope.
Funk? That'd be sick.
We'll find out. Yeah.
Get the researchers on that too. But yeah, there's not going to be a lot of star power, but this could be a sneaky fun game. Chuck Harris, Manny Bates, they're going to put on for the Big East Conference, and that's my pick for the game of the week.
Yeah, I like this one. Penn State is at home here. This is a Penn State team that is currently first in the country in effective field goal percentage, top 10 in 3-point, 14th in 2-point percentage. They're fifth in 3-point field goal ratio. They almost 60% of the shots that they take are from deep, and they get a lot of assists on them too. So this is a good passing team. This is going to be, I think, a really interesting test of what Butler's defense is going to look like this year. This may also be a very high scoring game.
Yeah.
Butler's guards are going to have to come to play here, and we'll see if Penn State has an answer for Manny Bates down there. This is not the biggest lineup in the world. They rank 264th in average height, so Butler might be able to get advantage around the rim there. I like this game. I think this is going to be a must watch.
Yeah.
That's Monday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on FS1. Before that, 7 p.m. it's actually on the Big Ten Network, is DePaul at Minnesota. I don't think this is quite as interesting of a game. Minnesota currently sits outside the top 100 in KenPom. It's an incredibly slow offense. They're 355th in tempo. DePaul coming in at 88th in KenPom. This is a 2-point game with Minnesota having the advantage here, according to the metrics, but should be a kind of a close, low-scoring battle. I think DePaul has to hope they get Nick Ongenda back for this. I don't know what the timetable is there.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, unless barring something unforeseen happening, neither of these teams are going to make the NCAA tournament. But when we went over our DePaul preview in the 12 Days of Big East Miss, go check that out if you haven't already. A little shameless plug. In our 3 games to watch, I picked Minnesota for this DePaul team, and it's going to be a lot closer of a game. I think DePaul's looked a lot better than I think everyone thought that they were going to. They're still not any world beaters, but certainly better than everyone expected in the first week of the season. But yeah, I mean, seeing which players are going to develop the roles in their systems in this game are going to be interesting. The outcome of the game, who wins, who loses, isn't as interesting for me, but Minnesota, they're still Minnesota. It's a Big Ten team, and it's going to be a real test for DePaul.
Yeah, this is a winnable game for DePaul to get a high conference team here on the resume. Always good. You're trying to build confidence with a second-year head coach there. I think if you're the Big East, you really want to come away from this with one win, at least one win in these 2 games. They're not projected to win either one of them, but the Butler at Penn State one too. I strongly disagree with how KenPom views Butler. KenPom sees Butler as the 120th best team, with Penn State at 32. I do not think that's fair. It says Penn State should win this one by 12 points. That does not seem right to me.
No, I mean, Temple was 90 spots higher than Villanova, and we all saw how that happened. KenPom is great a little bit later in the season when they have more data to formulate their rankings off of. In the beginning of the year, it's still fairly accurate, but more of a crapshoot. But yeah, this game is going to be a battle of 2 second-year head coaches. Speaking of battle, Jamison Battle for Minnesota. He's going to be the best player on the court. And a little Big East reunion with Dawson Garcia from Marquette, then to UNC, now plays for Minnesota. So it's going to be good to see him against the Big East again.
Good stuff there. I like that. Yeah, Dawson Garcia, that's a name I haven't thought of in a while there.
Right.
While we're talking about Marquette, Golden Eagles are going to be in action Tuesday night. The 2 Gavitt games that we're going to have. We got Northwestern at Georgetown. That'll be at 6:30 p.m. on Fox Sports 1. And then Marquette at Purdue, 8:30 p.m. on Fox Sports 1 Eastern time for both of those. A lot of Big East games Tuesday night, but these are the notable ones. Let's start with the early one there, Georgetown against Northwestern. This is a game that we had also highlighted in the non-conference back in the 12 Days of Big East Miss. And Northwestern is a decent program, but on the outside looking in for the NCAA tournament, Georgetown here at home. It's a winnable game for the Hoyas if they can be as good as they were last time out and not the team that we saw against Coppin State.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. This game is going to be interesting to watch, and interesting is definitely a word. This matchup to me, honestly, has very little intrigue. I'm not excited to watch this game. Northwestern lost their best player to North Carolina this offseason, and Pete Nance. You want to talk about cool names, though? Boo Booey.
Love that name.
Boo Booey. I might watch the game just to see his name. Um, yeah, I mean, Northwestern has a shaky front court. Um, this matchup just not interesting to me at all, to be to be quite frank with you. But what's going to happen is whatever coach loses this game, it's going to get even hotter.
Yeah.
See.
Yeah. Yeah, that game matters a lot more for the team that loses than
Yeah.
the team that wins. Let's
Certainly.
take a look at the later game there, Marquette at Purdue. Purdue is this is a real good team over there. Marquette has had some good non-conference wins in the past. They've been able to be competitive, do something. Shaka Smart here in the second year. Do you think that they're going to be able to give Purdue a game?
No. No. I don't like lying or sugarcoating anything, but no, I mean, Zach Edey is just an absolute monster. And both of these teams are coming into this game losing their best player, Jaden Ivey, for Purdue, and Justin Lewis for Marquette. Marquette has a bunch of role players. They need a star, and Purdue has that star in Zach Edey. They're a clear contender in the Big Ten. But I mean, it's not like they don't have any questions. There's potential on both sides, and this game is definitely going to be the more interesting ones to watch in the Monday night slate. But I don't think that Marquette can keep up with them on Tuesday night slate. My apologies.
Yeah. And that it's going to be interesting. I mean, you talk about Zach Edey. This is a Purdue team that has generally been really good in the paint. They get a lot of offensive rebounds. Marquette's just style of play lends itself to being difficult to kind of stop other teams from getting offensive rebounds. If you're going to press that much and extend yourself out over the floor, it'd be hard to keep up with that. So this would be a big game for Osa Ighodaro, matching up against Edey there. And Max Prosper is going to play into that as well. Ben Gold probably. They're gonna need a lot of help here. I think Marquette can keep up with Purdue, but the press is gonna have to be really, really effective, because if it isn't, they might be giving up a lot of baskets in their own end, and this could get ugly in a hurry.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. One more Gavitt game on Wednesday night. We're gonna be our show is gonna be after this one on Wednesday. So those Thursday, Friday Gavitt games, we're gonna be talking about them after this one. Iowa at Seton Hall. This was my pick for the game of the week. It didn't end up winning, but this is two teams that bowed out in the first round of the NCAA tournament last year. Iowa, a really, really good offensive team. Seton Hall, a really, really good defensive team. It's when Iowa has the ball, I think this is going to be a really, really intriguing matchup to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it's an outstanding defensive team versus an outstanding offensive team. Iowa, it's a unstoppable force versus an immovable object here. This, I can see why you picked this as your game of the week. It definitely has a lot of intrigue here.
Yeah, and it's Iowa just put up 112 points against North Carolina A&T. That's 89 against Bethune-Cookman. This is the 5th ranked offense on KenPom right now. They move quick. They still got Chris Murray over there, Patrick McCaffrey, kind of leading the charge here. Tony Perkins has been really good for them as a guard. This is just a really good Iowa team. It's also a pretty deep Iowa team that likes to play fast. Seton Hall, I think, kind of leaned into some of the tempo stuff at points. I'm really intrigued to see that. I'm also intrigued to see what Seton Hall's offense is going to look like here against an Iowa defense that has not been that good. That's going to be kind of the undercard here, is the way that they're able to do that, because this is a Seton Hall offense that I think is still finding an identity, and they'll have an opportunity to do that here.
Yeah, certainly. Kadari Richmond and Casey and Defo are going to be if Seton Hall is going to win this game, they're going to need to lean on those two heavily. I mean, Iowa has Chris Murray, like you mentioned. Is that Keegan's brother, by the way?
Yes, it is.
It is. Wow. All right, look at us go. But yeah, Chris Murray, he's a breakout candidate. I think, yeah, this game is definitely out of the games that we've highlighted in the Gavitt games so far, Monday through Wednesday. This is certainly the best one to watch.
Yeah, this is going to be Wednesday night at 7:30 on FS1. Seton Hall at home here too, I think makes a difference when you're talking about the defense being able to bring a little bit of intensity and energy here. Seton Hall should be rested too. Got a nice little break before the game. Maybe they're getting some players back. I don't think so based on what we've heard, but we'll see. Definitely a game to watch here. Let's go over the full schedule, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, so you have it. 6:30 p.m. on Monday, Delaware State at Villanova on FS2, DePaul at Minnesota at 7 on Big Ten Network, Butler at Penn State at 8:30 on FS1, and then Holy Cross at Creighton at 9. That'll be on CBS Sports. Then you go to Tuesday, Stonehill at Providence. This is Ed Cooley's alma mater there. He's going up against them. The 5 o'clock game on FS2, early window there in the AMP. Northwestern at Georgetown, 6:30 on FS1. Central Connecticut at St. John's, 7 o'clock on FS2. Buffalo at UConn, same time, 7 p.m. on CBS Sports. Marquette at Purdue, 8:30 on FS1. And then Fairfield at Xavier in the late slot there, 9 o'clock on FS2. And then Iowa at Seton Hall, the lone game there on Wednesday night, 7:30 p.m. at the Prudential Center, FS1. That's the slate for next week as we look ahead here. This game is starting to count.
Games are certainly starting to count. Yeah, I mean, the first week there's just, if you're not named Villanova in the Big East, it was a lot of fluff games, to be quite honest with you, and that's how it should be in the first week of the season. I think. I mean, everybody wants like Kentucky Duke right off the jump, but I like kind of easing into the season. You see it in college football. I mean, I don't mind that at all, and I think it was a very successful week for some teams in the Big East. We're starting to figure some things out regarding teams and their identity, and I think next week, especially our show on Wednesday, is going to be even more telling.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, so we're sitting here on Sunday. I think that's basically going to do it for us. It's Big East is only one loss here with Villanova. Good games coming up this week. We'll be with you Wednesday night, so make sure to tune back in for that one. Follow us on Twitter if you're watching this live. If you've tuned in live at any point, thank you for watching. But yeah, check out the content on the site. You can find the link in the bio there. Follow us on Twitter. That's Tommy Godin. I am Matt St. Jean. If you're listening to this on a podcast service, make sure you subscribe. We're going to be coming at you 2 shows a week here all season long. And that's going to do it for us. For Tommy Godin, I am Matt St. Jean. And thank you very much for listening.